Hello, everybody. Now that we're in our air quality unit, I wanted to spend some time thinking about acid rain and acid deposition due to pollution. Now, when in the 1980s and 1990s, there was a lot of news on acid rain and how bad it was. Um, what we see is gotten a little bit better, but what this problem is due to is electric power plants, mainly coal-driven power plants, are the biggest culprits of this. Release a lot of really bad things: sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, and these things turn into acid, sulfuric acid, and nitric acid. And what happens then is a power plant releases these things into the air. They turn into these acids, mix with the water, and rainfall comes down as acid, right? And this isn't like melt your face off when it's raining, but it's like a pH of 2, and if you know anything about chemistry, that's like the pH of something like lemon juice. So in the like 60s and 70s, we saw that this was mainly a problem in the Northeast and over in Northern Europe also. So Scotland had some problems with this. Today, it's a little bit better. The northeastern U.S. has pH of rainfall ranging from 4.6 to 5.1, and that's not as acidic, but in some ways, a lot of the damage has already been done with this. So when we have this acidic rainfall, what happens is it mobilizes a lot of like metals and bad things in the soil that can poison the trees, and nutrients get basically taken out of because there's acid falling on the soil. It mobilizes those nutrients that then get washed out of the system and essentially, just washed downstream into rivers and eventually in the ocean. So if you look at some of the forests up in the Northeast, they have these really sickly looking trees. Even after this problem has been somewhat solved, we're still seeing a lot of like legacy impacts based on this problem. So if we look at, these are data from 20 years ago now, but this is still quite a problem where the Northeast has the biggest impact of this, right? Where we have pH down below 4.3. Okay, and what that's referring to then is, or what that's coming from, is all the power plants here basically in the US are releasing those nitrogen and sulfuric oxides, and that's the wind is blowing it over and dumping it over here on the Northeast. I feel like the Northeast oftentimes gets, a lot of the air pollution problems because of all of us here in, the western, more Midwest and western portion of the country. When that acid then deposits into aquatic systems, all of that acid kind of collects in these aquatic systems. What it really ends up with is fewer species. If fish are living in water that is below a pH 5, most of them are sterile. They're not able to reproduce. It interferes with calcium, so bones can start dissolving. Exoskeletons of like crayfish and shells of like clams, they will start dissolving and won't be able to grow, and like the shells will be very, very fragile, or they won't even be able to grow in the first place if it's really acidic. That somewhat depends on the bedrock of like the area. If there's limestone that has a lot of buffering capability, that won't happen. But in the Northeast, what we see is a lot of their bedrock is granite, which doesn't have the ability to buffer the adding of the acid from the acid rain. But what we see is that this is getting better. This is a problem that has been fixed as we're moving away from coal, as we're our coal plants are better at they have these things called scrubbers that are trying to pick up a lot of that sulfur oxides before they get released. And what we see is that, while this is a worldwide problem, at least in the US it is getting somewhat better. The thing is, many countries don't control anything about their acid emissions, particularly India and China. Unfortunately, that's like 2.5 billion people, and they are not really doing anything for their acid emissions, and that is going to have a worldwide impact, unfortunately. Sorry to end on such a downer, but see you all later.